Intel stock. What is going on with Intel stock? INTC stock is just sliding lower and lower and lower. First, is Intel stock a good value investment? I break down all my analysis is based on in value investing, and I ask the question: is this a stock? In this case, Intel stock. Is this a stock that will continually appreciate and add shareholder value? I don't see it. A lot of people are hoping that there's this big turnaround. I think they've missed a lot of what's going on with AI. I think they're going to be continually late to the party. But what I wanted to do is break down the latest financials for Intel stock based on value investing, and then show where I think a solid price is. And it's not exactly pretty compared to where Intel stock is right now. Then, after there's a big slide in Intel stock, INTC maybe hitting as low as say 10, 15 to 20, maybe then it's a good value investing stock to get into. Let's break down Intel stock, the financials they just released, and why Intel stock is sliding like it is. Let's jump in. I think this headline here, this comes from Benzinga. I think this headline kind of encapsulates a lot of what's going on with Intel stock. INTC is the symbol there. And they do, in this article, they did go through TSM stock, of course, and NVIDIA, NVDA stock, the two real leaders in the semiconductor industry. Intel is hoping to catch up in 2 years, which basically means you missed the boat. And the latest financials, of course, they missed on revenue, but exceeded on earnings. Okay, those are all great numbers, but what I like to look at, first, here's a good look at Intel stock. Had been sliding since late February, moving all the way down from 50, probably going to continue to move lower. I don't even see 30 as a floor. I'm looking at 20 as a possible floor. And here's a good look at Intel stock over the past couple of years, actually. It really hasn't brought in a lot of shareholder value. They've missed the boat many times. But let's take a look at, so Q1 did beat Q1 2023. There was an improvement, but what they were looking for was about 12.79. So it missed by about 70 million in revenue. That wasn't a huge miss. I mean, we're talking a small number comparatively for the quarter. Breaking down 2024, 2025 increases, 2025 is when they're really looking to see bigger gains, and in 2026 they really hope to get on the board and start catching up, like the article pointed out to. Sounds great. But what I'm looking at when I look at Intel stock right now, I'm asking the question, is it a good value investing stock? INTC stock. We're probably going to see INTC stock moving much lower over the course of the next 3, 6, 9 months. There's a couple variables you need to keep in mind. Number one, they're behind the curve. Number two, the economy here in the United States very likely to contract, and the entire stock market is going to sell off. I am looking for a stock market crash because the Federal Reserve is leaving interest rates higher for much, much longer. Because of that, the economy will slow down. The consumer's already feeling it. All stocks are going to move lower. So Intel stock does not have a monopoly on moving lower. The rest will catch up to Intel in that regard. Then it's a question of what's going to happen with the economy after that. Well, the Federal Reserve eventually is going to go ahead and lower interest rates after 6 months, after the presidential election, once the damage is already done. It'll take they'll be lowering interest rates all through, say, 2025. In 2026, that's when I really see the economy starting to heal and start progressively getting better and better. That's 2 years from now. So from a value investing standpoint, Intel stock is a bit rich. I wanted to break down the margins because you can see how there's sort of everything falls apart for Intel through the margins. That was gross margins. Operating margins is when things start to fall apart. Operating margins are a bit thin and potentially negative from quarter to quarter. Operating margins this quarter were negative, but net margins, as you can see, was sort of one of the things that kind of stood out to me. As a value investor, I'm looking for continually increasing revenues, notwithstanding slowdowns in the economy. Slowdowns in the economy for me are opportunities to jump in. Warren Buffett, of course, tells us sell when everybody's greedy, buy when everybody's running scared. So from that perspective, what I'm looking for is continually increasing earnings on top of revenue. In this case, Intel, not quite there. Earnings per share, this is what they're printing. But I look at the next few quarters and years in this case. When you break things down, when you look at projected earnings per share over the course of the next 2 years, it falls way short of where Intel Corp was previously. Here I like to break everything down from a value investing standpoint. Treasury yield. U.S. 10-year Treasury yield is sort of the benchmark. This is what you point to when you ask the question, is this a good stock? Well, here's the U.S. 10-year Treasury yield. It is yielding at this point 4.625% with very little risk. AAA rating, I think they have it right now. Regardless, when I say risk in regard to the U.S. 10-year Treasury, the Federal Reserve has let us know that they're going to be lowering interest rates most likely moving forward. They've moved interest rates upward significantly, and because of that, they're probably at the peak of this cycle. The very worst case scenario, maybe 0.25%, maybe a half. But that is a massive if. From here, Treasury yields will go lower starting in 6 months, which means price for Treasury yields goes up as those yields go down. So your risk in the investing in the Treasury right now is really small, relatively speaking. S&P 500, I've been saying this over and over again, most of the S&P 500 has been overvalued, overpriced for some time, but the yield, generally speaking, when you look at all 500 stocks, is about 5%. A lot of stocks just simply don't really appreciate in value, Intel being one of them. That'll kind of break everything down. Looking at the next 4 quarters, not 2024, $1.32 off of the $30 stock price for INTC stock, you're looking at 4.295%. All right. There's a lot of risk with an investment in Intel stock at this point. And it's still, your yield is less than the U.S. 10-year Treasury. The U.S. 10-year Treasury right now, I'm moving a lot of my money into bonds simply because of the risk to reward ratio. I look at all stocks as being overpriced given what's going to happen in the economy next. And yet, Intel isn't even yielding a low risk investment comparatively speaking. The way I see this, Intel stock, INTC, has a lot of room lower to go before it becomes a true value investing stock. That's huge. Like I said, 25, easy, probably. 20, okay. Now all of a sudden that $1.30, $1.32 is looking like a better value investment when you're looking at Intel stock from that perspective. Given that, I look at the downside risk to INTC as being very, very high, relatively speaking. Most savvy investors are going to be pushing into treasuries. And here's a nice thing about treasuries that you may not sort of connect as well. If we do get a stock market crash, if there is a major correction because of slowing revenue based on consumers getting taxed too much because of high interest rates, investors will rush into the U.S. 10-year Treasury. That pushes up price. Yield will fall. That adds in another layer of less risk for the benchmark investment grade. Whereas Intel, we could easily see another 30% chop off of Intel. I do not see the bottom in Intel just yet. I think we're a long way to go from a value investing standpoint. But given that, should we start to see Intel pushing all the way down, maybe even $10, 10, 15, 12 and a half, 15, then I'll start to revisit Intel as a value investing stock. It's going to be a while though, because I think it's overpriced. I think Intel themselves have a long way to go to catch up. You're looking at 2026. That's when the US economy will start to repair itself because of what was going on with the Federal Reserve after they've lowered interest rates. Just because they lower interest rates, it takes a while for the interest rates to really have an effect and get an economy either moving forward or restricting economic activity. Nonetheless, if you're looking for value investing principles, make sure to hit the like and follow button. You can also, I did a write-up on Intel stock based on value investing principles. My Substack link is down below. You can get the newsletter down there. We'll see you in the next video.